Welcome back to the channel, guys. So in this video, I wanted to go over the differences between the releases and the bodies that SH Figuarts has as far as the Dragon Ball Z figures. Um, Here I have three Gohans from my collection. This is the 1.0. That's the SH Figuarts Super Saiyan Sun Gohan SDCC exclusive. This is the 2.0 SH Figuarts Super Saiyan Sun Gohan. And then we have the superhero Gohan, which is a 3.0, which is the most recent release. So going over this video to say that it's probably like the perfect time to start collecting for all the new collectors out there that feel like it's too late, or if you're an older collector and then just want like updated versions of your figure. So we'll go over the differences here. So for the 1.0 bodies, which I personally am not a fan of, but they're good to add. They're kind of like Grail figures. So this is one of the Grails. This is the Super Saiyan Son Gohan. The 1.0 figures, though, the articulation is kind of funky. So just starting off from the top, their shoulders go up about that far. Their arms are on like just like a ball peg swivel. And then that peg is, see, as the arm falls off of this figure. Just the 1.0 figures kind of feel like antiques at this point. So if I kind of get you a look, this whole thing is falling apart. So this is what the peg looks like inside. So this one peg goes into that one swiveling ball peg. So there's a lot of gaps in the 1.0 figures. Before I put the rest of this back on, a lot of the 1.0 figures come with like an extension in their waist, although they do have a full 360 motion, and they look forward about that far, they look back about that far. But when you make them look back, there's a huge gap there, so that doesn't look good. Again, the figure's outdated. It's a 1.0. Let me kind of get this stuff back on here. Bear with me because it fell on the floor. This just goes right back in this peg hole. So to get this back on. So moving down to the leg articulation here. Excuse me. So for these legs on the 1.0 body, they're kind of like on a, well, there's just two ball pegs there. So in order to get articulation, you have to pull it down both sides and then get it to do the split. So now when you look at that, again, the gap looks horrible. So, and then when you have the legs out, it just looks like really wobbly. Just standing them up like that doesn't look good at all. That's what the back looks like. That's what the bottom looks like. So it can do the splits forward also. There's no thigh swivel. There's usually like two sections right here, which I will show you on the 2.0 body as the generations of toys have grown. So this is what the knee looks like when you bend it back. Again, there's no extra knee pad here to get rid of that gap. There's just a lot of gaps in these 1.0s, and like I said, the plastic and the material just feels like more of like an antique at this point. So the ankles, not much of a rocker there. They could go on the full 360. And then that's what the toe hinge looks like. So one good thing about the 1.0s versus the 2.0s, and I'll show the difference in a second, is it seems like they put a lot more detail as far as like the shading and things like that. So this Gohan came with the cloak. This is what the cloak looks like. And again, there's just shading, a lot more shading all around. Again, this cloak has zero articulation. So there's shading in his wrist straps, kind of like a color contrast. He has shading throughout his body as it goes from, you know, dark to light skin tone. There's a little bit of shading in his pants area here in the crotch is kind of like a black airbrushed on. A lot of details in the lining in the boots. The details in the face. For this one is the Comic-Con, the color exclusive edition. So the details in this face looks a lot better. They captured Gohan's likeness very well. They even have shading all in the back, so not much on the back of the gi, but again, as you get to the bottom of the pants, there is some shading there. So One thing that sets the 1.0s apart is they took a lot more time in the shading and details versus the articulation and the gaps and things like that and what it looks like. The hair looks okay, a little bit of line detail, but then the color contrast, it goes from a dark yellow, light yellow, all the way to white at the tip. So even the back has some shading. So this is what a 1.0 figure looks like. Again, I'm not a big fan, but if you're a completionist, if you want to collect them all, then Grail figures are good to have, just to say that you have, like, you know, one of the original releases. But again, it's like antique at this point. So going from 1.0 to 2.0, you can already see the major differences here. The skin tone on the 2.0s don't have much shading. Some, not all. The wrist straps, it's kind of like a pale matte blue. It does have shading in its crotch area. It goes from that purple to the black airbrush. And then the boots are kind of like whatever color that is brown. I was about to say mahogany. But that brownish yellow, just a paint, like a matte paint. So that's the 1.0 going on years ahead to the 2.0. So the 2.0 bodies, like I said, the articulation got a little bit better. In hand, the plastic material that they're using, it feels a lot better. So one thing I didn't go over is the articulation in the neck. My apologies. So the 1.0, at least for this Gohan, there's zero articulation in this neck. So that'll be the last part of that articulation in the 1.0 body. So moving on to the 2.0. Now they started putting more attention into articulation versus paint work. So nonetheless, this face does capture Gohan's likeness very well. They do have the contrast in the dark yellow to the light yellow. There's no yellow, there's no white tips in the hair, but the sculpt looks amazing. In the front of the figure, this is just kind of like a purple plastic, blue plastic, and then the purple plastic with the black shading. So articulation in the 2.0s, it gets a little bit better. So it's a lot more sturdy. The shoulders go up about that far. This is now a ball peg that goes into a butterfly joint. So there's no butterfly joint in the 1.0. So with the butterfly joints, well, for this one at least, it can go in about that far, but it looks a lot cleaner. So when you pull this out, there's not much gap, because now you get kind of like a, it's kind of like a, what do you call it? Like a sleeve rather, but the sleeve is the actual butterfly joint. And on the other side, the butterfly joint just looks like an extension of his shoulder. So they get rid of the gaps there. And the articulation is a lot better than the 1.0. Moving down to, well, his head can tilt side to side in a full 360. He looks down that far. He can look up that far. And then the neck has a lot more articulation in the 2.0 body. Moving back to the 1.0, there's no side tilt. And there's hardly, he can look up far, but he can't look down very far. I can go over the fact that this figure actually can reach in farther than the 2.0. But then, you know, if this pad wasn't here, you would definitely see a huge gap there. So going from this to that just doesn't look too great to me. And then touching the plastic material, going from 1.0 to 2.0, like, you'll definitely feel the difference. So moving down to his ab crunch. And again, with this one, there's no extension as you pull up and down. This section here for the ab crunch goes down about that far, and it looks up a lot further, and there's no gap here anymore. So on the 1.0, there's a huge gap there. It doesn't look good. He can move side to side just a bit, full 360, no gaps. Moving down to his legs now. This is the biggest difference you get here with the 2.0, 1.0 to 2.0. So as the splits don't go that far up, there's still like separation here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different sections. This section is kind of like there's a ball peg that snaps on there. So the ball pegs got smaller. and he can do the splits front to back about that far. So again, with the gaps, the legs don't pull down anymore. There's a thigh swivel now, right, to get rid of that gap. And then the knees are now double jointed. So instead of just seeing like, you know, where the plastic folds, now you get another piece there to fill in that gap. And it looks like his knees are actually bending now out of his pants. And even in the back, the gap looks good. So showing the difference again, that does not look too good there on the 1.0. Going down to his ankle rocker, still not much, it's still on a ball peg, full 360. And then the toe hinge now goes all the way up versus this toe hinge only going up about that far. So major differences from 1.0 to 2.0. Again, this is getting more into my era of collecting. I have plenty of 2.0 figures, not very many 1.0s. And the few that I have that are 1.0 are just to complete my collection and section. So let me go over the double jointed elbows here. So there's a joint here and there's a joint here, and then it gives them kind of like an elbow look to get rid of that gap, versus this is just on one joint and there's a lot more gaps in there. So even the front inside of the elbow area looks a lot better with the double jointed. And the figure, now that we're done with articulation and we see the difference, the figures from 2.0, 1.0 to 2.0 actually got a little bit taller. So you can see that he's slightly taller, right? So moving from 2.0 to 3.0, this is where it really gets good. And this is why I say it's the perfect time to start collecting. It's not too late. So this is the superhero Gohan. This is a DL custom head, but this is what the neck pegs look like now. So they can rotate a whole lot. There's no more going from 2.0 to 3.0. This is the peg that we're kind of accustomed to. It slots in and it's kind of like one jointed. It can go into 360, up, down, and left and right. And then the neck has some articulation. So going to 3.0, again, the neck is back to just an up and down articulation. It doesn't rotate, but this is where you get all your rotation from, is in the neck peg. So that slots in there. It's nice and tight. This is what the neck peg hole looks like. Pop that on and it fits snug. So articulation, they can look pretty much get his chin into his chest. Looks up very far also. Just put this back on so I can set him back here. Side to side is very good, all the way around 360. And then getting into the arm articulation. So now the technology and things like that, as far as how they're making their figures, got a whole lot better. As you can see, there's pretty much zero gap here now. So the way these ball pegs work, so if you can see inside there, there's a peg that slots down, and then, you know, the cup for that peg where this peg slots into that. So it's kind of like a joint here. The peg goes in there and then it slots down to where there's another cup for that end of the peg to go into. So it just gets better articulation with less gaps. So if you bring, kind of scoot these back because it's a little bit close to the camera. So when you get this extension to the inside, you can kind of fold in a lot more. You can actually pull that all the way in, versus the 2.0, which barely, I mean, if you bring them up, you could go in a little bit, but there's still some gaps there, as you can see. And when you look at this one, there is a gap, but it doesn't look as bad because that slot in the inside is also the same color as his gi, and it kind of takes away from that. So that's what the butterfly joint looks like. And then he has the bicep swivel, and then the double jointed elbow got a whole lot better. It's nice, thicker. The material feels a little bit better as far as like the plastic that they're using and things like that. The wrist pegs are great. I go over these wrist pegs in the 2.0. They're also good. And then the bicep swivel is nice and loose. Bicep swivel on the 1.0s are, it's kind of tight. It's kind of hard to maneuver. So moving down to the ab crunch on the 3.0s, now we're getting a little bit further. There's no gap in the back. And then ab crunch goes that far with no gap in the front. So just the make of this newer model is a whole lot better. So he could still go on a full 360 for his waist. And then where the 3.0s kind of changed the game is down here on the crotch area. So now the splits can go all the way out. As you see, the differences in the crotch area. So as this one cannot do the splits all the way out, the gaps are now a lot different. So the connector piece that goes on the peg got a lot thicker. The splits, one thing that's not good about the 3.0 is now that this part is hindering, it's kind of like his butt part of the pamper, or just his, you know, his butt is kind of hindering him from doing the splits forward, but that's okay. The thigh swivel is very good. And then we have the double jointed knees here. Pretty much there is a gap, but it doesn't look that bad now because of the new sculpts that they're using. Again, when we bring it here, 2.0's knees look great, but then the 1.0, like, you know, we're way past this point by now. So moving down to his ankle rocker. Now it's in 2 parts instead of 1. It ankle rocks here and it still gets a full 360 as his ankle pegs into this foot. And then there's another peg that's coming down here to get this, the shoe onto his foot. And then the toe hinge goes all the way up now. So this is the differences between going from 1.0 to 2.0 to 3.0. You could get a lot more better poses out of your figures. The figures just look, more put together. The details got better in the faces, even though this is a custom. The caption and likeness a lot better now. The spikes in the hair are becoming more of what we're accustomed to as far as Dragon Ball Z goes. Like, we want the hair to be like super spiky, a lot of details and things like that. The line details in the faces are getting a lot better. Just the details overall look good. The muscle sculpts now, we're used to Dragon Ball Z characters looking like kind of jacked. So the 3.0 figures are definitely starting to do that. One complaint about the 3.0 figures, or at least some of them, they are a little bit taller. SH Figuarts does a great job of keeping their figures in scale. These are all SH Figuarts, but then there's other brands like Kong Studios, Demoniacal Fit, and things like that that are coming out with their 3.0 figures. So the scale might be slightly off, but as far as the detail and articulation, they're doing a great job. So like I said before, this is probably the best time to start collecting if you haven't started yet, or if you just started and you feel like you missed out on a lot. It seems like they're going to be re-releasing a lot of these figures. For example, this is going to come out with the 3.0 version, so you'll pretty much get this body, but this version of Gohan. So I'm excited for that. I have it on pre-order. If you feel like this video was helpful, go ahead and hit that like button. If you want to keep an eye out for my videos to come, go ahead and subscribe. Until then, thank you for watching.